The moment the passport caught fire, the entire terminal seemed to freeze, as if time itself had flinched at what it was witnessing. It happened at one of the busiest international airports in the country, the kind of place where people rushed without looking, where announcements blended into noise, and where power often hid behind uniforms and counters. The girl stood alone at the gate, holding her boarding pass with calm hands, her shoulders relaxed, her face unreadable. She looked young, almost too young to be taken seriously, dressed simply, no designer bag, no visible status. To most people passing by, she was invisible. The gate agent was not invisible. He wore authority-like armor. His posture was stiff, his tone sharp, his eyes trained to judge quickly. He had already decided who deserved respect and who did not. When he looked at her passport, something in him hardened. He examined it longer than necessary, flipped it over, scanned it again, and then announced loudly that there was a problem. People nearby slowed their steps. Some turned, some stared. The girl stayed quiet. She did not argue. She did not explain. She had learned long ago that silence often made people reveal themselves faster than words ever could. The agent claimed the passport was damaged and invalid. He said it with confidence, as if daring anyone to challenge him. He held it up for others to see, shaking his head in mock disappointment. The girl calmly pointed to the valid visa page and the official seal, but he waved it away like an annoyance. His voice grew louder. He said she would not be boarding the plane. He said rules were rules. Then he did something that no one expected and no one would forget. He reached for a small lighter kept at the desk for sealing documents and set the edge of her passport on fire. The flame climbed quickly, orange and cruel, eating into years of identity, travel, and authority. A few people gasped. Someone laughed nervously, thinking it was some kind of performance. Others froze, unsure whether to step in. The smell of burning paper spread through the air, sharp and bitter. The girl did not scream. She did not cry. She watched the fire the same way someone watches a storm they know will pass. Her eyes stayed steady, not on the passport, but on the agent's face. There was something unsettling in her calm, something that made a few onlookers uncomfortable without knowing why. The agent dropped the burning document into a metal tray and stamped it invalid with dramatic force. He announced that she was banned from traveling and needed to leave the gate immediately. His tone carried satisfaction, like he had just proven a point. Security was watching. Supervisors were nearby. None of them stepped in. It was easier not to. It was safer to assume the agent knew what he was doing. Power often survives because people choose comfort over courage. The girl quietly picked up her bag. She did not rush. She did not beg. Instead, she reached into her coat pocket and pulled out a small, official identification card. Not flashy, not dramatic, just clean, clear, and unmistakably real. She placed it gently on the counter, right next to the ashes of her passport. The agent barely glanced at it at first. He was still riding the high of control. Then his eyes focused. His face changed in a way that was slow but devastating. Color drained. His mouth tightened. His confident posture cracked. The card identified her as the Chief Federal Aviation Administration inspector assigned to conduct surprise compliance audits at major airports nationwide. The silence that followed was heavier than the flame had been. People leaned in. Phones came out. Whispers rippled like shockwaves. The supervisors who had looked away suddenly rushed forward, their expressions stiff with panic. Security stepped closer, unsure of who was now in charge. The girl finally spoke to the situation, though she said nothing aloud. Her presence said everything. She had come unannounced, as she always did, to see how systems behaved when no one thought they were being watched. She had traveled alone, intentionally understated, carrying nothing but her credentials and a standard passport, to experience exactly what everyday travelers experienced. What she experienced was discrimination, abuse of power, and a violation so severe it would end careers. The agent tried to recover. He reached for the ID, but his hands trembled. He attempted a smile that collapsed halfway. He began explaining policies, procedures, misunderstandings, anything to slow the fall that had already begun. It was too late. Within minutes, the gate area became a controlled storm. Airport management arrived. Federal supervisors were called. Operations paused. The burned passport was photographed, documented, sealed as evidence. Witness statements were taken on the spot. The agent was escorted away from the desk, his badge removed, his voice suddenly small and unheard. The girl stood to the side, watching the chaos unfold, not with joy, not with anger, but with a quiet sense of balance. This was not revenge. This was consequence. She had spent years earning her position. She knew regulations down to the smallest detail. She had inspected airports in silence, passed some, shut others down, always focusing on safety, fairness, and accountability. She knew that how people were treated at the lowest moment revealed the true culture of an institution. And this airport had just failed spectacularly. Flights were delayed. News crews arrived faster than expected. Someone had leaked a photo of the burned passport and her ID side by side. It spread online in minutes. Comment sections exploded. People recognized the story instantly, not because it was rare, but because it was familiar. Too familiar. By the end of the day, the airport issued a public apology. The agent was terminated and placed under federal investigation. Several supervisors were suspended pending review for negligence and failure to intervene. Mandatory bias training was ordered, but more importantly, structural changes were announced. Oversight increased. Reporting systems were revised. Anonymous complaints were given real weight. The girl was offered immediate replacement documents, private transport, and personal apologies from executives who had never before spoken to someone like her as an equal. She accepted none of it with enthusiasm. She accepted it with professionalism. When she finally boarded her flight hours later, she walked down the jet bridge alone, carrying a temporary passport and the quiet knowledge that her presence had changed something. Maybe not everything, maybe not forever, but enough. As the plane lifted into the sky, she looked out the window at the shrinking airport below. She thought about the girl she once was, standing in lines, being doubted, being questioned, being watched too closely. She thought about how easy it would have been to react with anger, to shout her title the moment things went wrong. But she also knew that letting people reveal themselves was sometimes the most powerful tool of all. The agent had burned a passport, thinking he was erasing someone's access to the world. What he had actually burned was his own authority, his own future, and the illusion that unchecked power goes unnoticed. The lesson traveled farther than that airport ever could. It reminded everyone watching that respect should never depend on appearance, that authority without humanity collapses under scrutiny, and that karma does not always arrive loudly. Sometimes it arrives quietly, standing patiently at the gate, waiting for someone to make a choice. And when it does, it never misses.